everyone. My name is Sube, Electronic Resources Librarian and Metadata Specialist at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. Today, I'm going to share my experiment with ChatGPT for subject cataloging. I will first give you an introduction, then go over the methodology, and I will show you some results. At the end, I will summarize the findings and the lessons I learned. Okay, why am I interested in testing AI for subject cataloging? When I cataloged ebooks, I found that some MARC records had low-quality subject headings or sometimes no subject headings. To find and assign standard terms for improving the subject heading part, I used the Library of Congress subject headings, which is known as LCSH. But sometimes it's challenging to identify a proper term from over 460,000 headings in the LCSH database. Additionally, cataloging art publications involves the subject analysis regarding various art periods, movements, and more. So I thought it might be worthwhile to explore the potential of AI in expediting the subject cataloging process. So my goals are to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of ChatGPT in subject cataloging. And I also try to examine the implications of AI-driven subject cataloging for electronic art publications. For this study, I selected 30 ebooks on art topics from the library's electronic collection. I used the ChatGPT-4 Mini to generate the subject headings, and I also used the OCLC connection to validate those headings. This is the workflow I followed. First, I extracted the data such as a title, table of contents, summary, and subject heading generated by catalogers from the library's database system. Then I formulated a prompt, which I will explain shortly. Then I asked ChatGPT to generate subject headings. And then I compared the AI-generated headings with those generated by human catalogers. I analyzed the results based on the accuracy of MARC coding and LCSH assignment. I also checked whether the AI-generated headings reflected the contents of the ebooks. So what is a prompt? Prompt is a command used to request information from ChatGPT. A good prompt contains 4 elements: context, instruction, output format, and input data. This is the prompt template I used for this project. I instructed the ChatGPT to generate up to 6 Library of Congress subject headings in order of predominance. I also asked ChatGPT to use MARC 21 field 650, 600, 610, 630, and 651. For input data, I provided the title, table of contents, and summary. Let me show you some results. ChatGPT generated 4 to 6 subject headings for each book, totaling 171 headings. Among these AI-generated headings, 97% were correct and 3% were incorrect based on the accuracy of mark coding. This table shows examples of incorrect coding. The right column is mark coding created by human cataloggers. The left column shows the incorrect mark coding by ChatGPT. Let's look at the first example. The field tag should be 600 for the artist name, Philip Coston. But ChatGPT generated assigned 650, which is incorrect. And you can see another example as well. Next, I checked if the AI-generated headings match the authorized terms in LCSH. Okay, this table shows the 3 different types of matching cases. The first row shows the perfect match in preferred terms, which means the headings from ChatGPT and LCSH are exactly same. And the second row shows a match with the variant terms. For example, ChatGPT generated a socially engaged art, which is a variant term for social practice art in LCSH. At the bottom, there is a partial match. ChatGPT generated, please look at the first example of the partial match. ChatGPT generated the valid main heading, art criticism. But the subdivision Renaissance 1400 to 1600 is not a valid term in LCSH. So it's considered partial match. This graph shows that 71% of the AI-generated headings are valid terms, either in preferred or variant terms. 10% were produced as partial matches. I noticed that the subject headings were more likely to match when they covered general art topics. And 19% of the AI-generated headings were unmatched terms. Here are the unmatched terms, the examples of unmatched terms: revolutionary painting, art and activism, and online communities, and more. I initially asked the ChatGPT to generate a Library of Congress subject headings, but it still produced these non-LCSH terms. This phenomenon is called hallucination, which is a well-known issue in the AI community. Next, I checked if the AI-generated headings reflected the contents of the ebooks. About 21 records have the right topics, but the same concepts frequently appeared in multiple 650 fields. As you can see in this example, the topic is about art and religion in 18th century Europe. A human cataloger added 2 subject headings on the topic, but ChatGPT generated the multiple 650 fields on similar concepts. Okay, one of the LCSH rules is that the most predominant topic should be assigned to the first 650 field. But ChatGPT was not effective at determining this order of predominance. Only 5 records have the most important topic in the first 650 fields. ChatGPT also does not fully understand the complex LCSH construction rules, such as pairing multiple 650 fields to describe the content of an ebook. Let's look at the example. In this example, a human cataloger combined multiple subject headings to describe the content, while the ChatGPT kind of struggled to identify the main topic. In summary, ChatGPT understands the MARC standards and rules, but makes some coding errors. It generates good subject headings for general art topics. It also generates valid LCSH terms, but there are still issues with hallucination and redundancy. ChatGPT does not fully understand the nuances of complex LCSH construction rules. Here are some lessons I learned from this study. ChatGPT can be a useful tool for subject cataloging, but we must be cautious due to hallucinations, redundancy, and MARC coding errors. Therefore, human intervention is still needed in reviewing AI-generated subject headings. ChatGPT also can help experienced catalogers save time in subject cataloging. Initially, I thought that ChatGPT might be useful for entry-level catalogers because they use AI-generated headings as a good starting point, but they may struggle to handle issues like hallucination and redundancy and MARC coding errors. So ChatGPT could be a time saver for experienced catalogers. Finally, some subject headings generated by ChatGPT are valuable, even if they are unmatched terms. So these terms could be proposed as new or variant terms for LCSH. Okay, this concludes my presentation. Thank you so much, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Sarah Osman-Bender and Barry Johnson for their support and feedback for these projects. Thank you.